So today on the bench we have a Uniden President HR2510, or actually just President HR2510. This one was sent in by the customer. It does work, but he wanted it recapped, wanted the glue removed because he knows how bad that stuff can be, and transceiver alignment. So nothing fancy. Like I say, no known issues, and you can see the implements of dental torture are already laying out. That's because I have been degluing. So if you own one of these radios, 2510, 2600, one of the original President Lincolns, all of these radios, even the Radio Shacks, the HTX series radios, they all use a similar chassis, and they all use that blasted corrosive glue. There is absolutely nothing more important to do to your radio than to get that glue out. The caps, they're going to go bad. You're just going to be forced to change those one day. But the glue, you really should get that out before it does catastrophic damage to your radio, because that's exactly what it does, catastrophic damage. I mean, it's fixable, don't get me wrong. It's not like the radio is going to go into self-destruct mode and blow up, but it's one of those, save yourself some major headaches later by doing some minor maintenance now. So I've already taken most of the glue out. The rest of it will be taken out when I do the recap, because all of the large electrolytic capacitors have glue on them. You look down in here, you can see there's still blobs of glue all around these caps. But like I say, I'm not going to bother trying to get that out now because it's stuck to the capacitors. So when I pull them out, usually you just wiggle them back and forth. The glue will come unbonded from the circuit board, and it'll just come out and stay stuck to the capacitor. But the main problems you'll have in these radios is in your final section, in the PA section. Don't be surprised if you own one of these radios, especially if you haven't used it in a while, and it worked when you put it away, and you get it out, and you go to transmit, and you don't have any transmit power, or you have very low transmit power. And it transmitted fine when you put the radio away and used it last. First thing to do, take off the top cover. Well, I don't have to tell you to look to see if there's glue. It's guaranteed. They put glue on everything with a ferrite core, so there's some torroid transformers here on these ferrite cores. They pour glue on there to keep the cores from moving, bouncing around, because this is a mobile radio. So there's some here, 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 and there's a little teeny tiny guy over here. I have seen the glue not only corrosive, but so conductive that these two were shorted out. And it was just dead. No output. Well, actually, it had a little bit of output power, but in the milliwatts. As soon as I took the glue out, I think I had to actually rewind this little guy over here and that one. But when I got the glue off of these two and tried it, it transmitted fine. That's all it was. The glue was just literally shorting out these transformers. So, like I say, really important to get that stuff out. Now, don't be surprised when you get over here to this little guy. The instant you touch it, the wires break off. This one, that'll happen occasionally to this one. These aren't usually too bad unless the glue was really deteriorated. It can eat these wires off as well, but these are fairly heavy gauge, so they're usually okay. But this one, smaller gauge wire, and this one here, the enamel magnet wire that's used on these is tiny, and it doesn't take much corrosion for those things to just bink, snap right off. Now, fortunately, I actually removed most of the glue from around this one. None of the leads were, like the pre-driver transistor right here, or the because occasionally you'll have to replace all the components in this area. The leads will just be corroded off. You'll touch this transistor and it'll just fold over because there's only like maybe one lead still attached to the circuit boards. The other two are just gone. But surprisingly, this one was actually, the wires on this toroid transformer here actually are still attached. Now I'm still going to remove it and rewind it. Because there's so much glue on these, you'll just never get it off. And you can take it out and try to get it off, but then you're going to end up scratching all the enamel off of the wire, and you'll just end up with shorts in the windings. It's just a lot faster. There's only a couple wraps of wire on there. Just desolder the little critter, rewrap it. It's not very hard. Just get yourself some magnet wire of the proper proper gauge and just rewind the little guy. But so actually, there's all the glue right there. And you can see some of this stuff. Some of it's dark brown. That's the stuff that's, when it's still tan, it's not bad, but when it gets brown like that, it's corrosive. That is when it's in its bad state, and it's actually conductive. You can, I don't know if I've ever shown that before. I think I have in a video. But you can actually take an ohm meter a lot of times when this stuff gets to that state where it's really dark, almost black. You can take an ohm meter and touch one side here and touch on the other side, and it's conductive. You can measure resistance on this glue. So yeah, very important. Get that stuff out. And it's all over in these radios. Like I say, all of the capacitors will have it. It's on all of the toroid transformers back here in the back. There's some on either side of this ceramic filter. This crystal, as you can see, moves. It didn't before because it was glued right there, like that, down flat against the IC on here. Now I'm going to pull this board out anyhow, this board and this board, because I have to replace the electrolytic capacitors on them. And when I have this board off, I'll finish cleaning it off, because there was a little bit, it looks like, got on some of the bottom pins of this IC. I'll get that cleaned off really well. And then put some modern, non-corrosive glue in here to just kind of tack that crystal back down so it can't move. But other than that, there's usually not any more glue. Like I say, toroid transformers, a couple spots on this board here, and the big capacitors. The other place you'll find that is on the PLL synthesizer module board. Both of the voltage regulators here, you're going to find a big glob of it oozed out all over the place here and here. Now the glue that was here usually will come over and touch the leads of this IC. If you look in there and you see that they're corroded, do yourself a favor, even though you have it cleaned off, go ahead and desolder the IC, take it out, and clean it off really good. Take, a wire brush, something like this, or a fiberglass brush, and make sure you get all traces of that stuff off of there so there's no remnants of that glue on there, just continually eating the leads off of your components. And then also over here on this resonator oscillator for the main processor here, they always have a big blob of it on here. Sometimes it will get onto the leads of that one. In the case of this one, it didn't. It was just around the back side, so no worries there. And there is some glue down in here. You can see that's still there. Again, I haven't worried about that for the moment because these capacitors are going to get replaced, and when I pull them out, usually they stay stuck together. I just take them out as a pair, but the glue comes out with them. So, yeah, so very important, remove the glue. Because if your radio's still working, count your blessings, but it's not going to be working for too much longer, because every single one of these radios is eventually going to be killed by that stuff right there. It is going to kill it. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just a matter of time before that stuff starts eating your radio from the inside out. And of course, you can see I pulled the synthesizer module out there. Like there's only 4 screws, 2 screws on each side here. Just unplug all the connectors and the 2 coax cables. Makes that a lot easier to service out of the radio. It's real simple to get out. It's a modular board, so and as long as you don't mess with these, cut all the wire ties off, you don't even need to mark your plugs. It basically just, they fall back into place where they're supposed to be. But also, while you have that out of the way, makes it one heck of a lot easier to get in here and do your cap change. Instead of having that board flopping around in here. Now the only thing you've got flopping around in here is a little bit of a wiring harness. Looks like the only modification that someone did to this, because it does look pretty much stock with the exception of these 2 wires here. They go up to an external, out of camera view, sorry about that. Someone has added an extra, let me get the camera up a little bit here. Someone has added an extra jack right here for an external speaker. I know I've done that a lot on radios for people as well. But these do not from the factory come with a speaker jack on the back. You can get speaker out of the plug here, but you got to use the accessory plug. And a lot of people, the only thing they have is this jumper plug. And without this jumper plug, which I just tossed on the floor. Okay, this little wire here is actually completing the signal path for your speaker. So if you don't have this plug, you're not going to have any sound coming out of the internal speaker in the radio. So it's very important to have this little guy plugged in. But yeah, normally you would use the accessory plug for an external speaker. Honestly, it's just easier to add an 1/8" jack, because that's what, you know, if you buy external speakers, that's what they usually have on them, is an 1/8" jack. So, you know, somebody's already done that and did a good job of it. It's tucked in there, nothing's shorted out, so don't need to do anything with that. So let me get to recapping, get the last few remnants of the glue out. Like I say, I'm probably going to just go ahead and take this little toroid transformer out right there. Just go ahead and rewind it, because yeah, there's not much holding those leads on. They are corroded, I can see. I'm just so surprised they didn't snap off when I was chipping the glue out of there. But yeah, it's as corroded as they are. It's just eventually they're still going to just corrode off. There's no way for me to clean the rest of that glue off of there without actually damaging it. So, like I said, it's just faster. Just rewind a little guy. Even the big ones. Any of these. If you have problems with the wires snapping off, just rewind. Just rewind them. You know. Oh, where in the heck is my wire? Let's see here. Yeah. You know, if you do this stuff like I do for a living, just buy yourself these kits of enamel coated wire. So, you know, Remington Industries makes these kits. It's nice. They're, you know, they're just wire in a box. Actually, one of them fell down in, I see. Actually, I got to open it up anyhow. Try and get these other ones fall out. Oh, where is the wire? But you can see, this just comes with a roll of wire. In pretty much every gauge. Different gauges in each box. I think actually some of them duplicate. But yeah, this one covers some real teeny tiny 32 gauge wire up to 22 gauge. Then this one goes from 24 to 14. So yeah, there is a little bit of overlap. This one has 24 and 22, same as this one. But yeah, like I say, if you do these kind of repairs for a living, just get yourself some enamel wire assortment kits. It's, you know, you'll have, I'm not going to say a lifetime supply. I have actually had to replace 1 or 2 rolls of this, because I do have to wind quite a few of these little things. But yeah, it's just, you know, there's the kit number. This one's a MR200, or no. Yeah, MR200. Well, maybe we use the same number. It's just 2 different gauges, because they're actually both, I just noticed, they're both MR200. But like I say, you can get these online. I think you can get these on eBay, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's some sellers on eBay that sell the Remington wire assortment kits on eBay. So if you just look on eBay for magnet wire kit, I'm pretty sure they sell these. I think I've seen these kits on eBay. Now, a lot of times it'll be a little bit more expensive on eBay buying it from, you know, because somebody's, you know, third party selling it. But honestly, what's it going to cost? Maybe $1 or 2 more. Shoot, just buy it on there. It doesn't matter. It's a lot of times for me convenience of eBay. But there you go. So let me get to recapping. Rewind the little guy back there. Get her fired back up. Do the transceiver alignment, and we'll come back when she's up and running. I think the only other thing I got to do, did forget, customer wants the light bulb changed. He thinks that's still the original light bulb in there, so, you know, while it's in the shop, you change the light bulb, because you know how luck goes. You'll spend a lot of money, get a radio like this restored. You send it back, and the light bulb will burn out the next day. So, yeah, it's just one of those little things. Change the light bulb while it's here. Lord knows how many hundreds of hours, possibly thousands of hours, that little light bulb's been burning. So, yeah, they're cheap, and it cover's already off. So, I shall return. I guess I thought I'd actually tack on a little piece of, actually, a little bit when I rewind the toroid transformer, and I couldn't see it because it was hidden underneath of it. Actually, yeah, the center lead, while I was cleaning the glue out, had already broken off. So that's why I almost always rewind this one, because even if you could get the glue off, the wires are going to be so thin because they've been corroded. There's hardly anything left to them, so it's just best to always rewind this little guy. And like I say, that's the one that goes in the back right-hand corner here. And you also notice the driver transistor is missing, and you probably see some green goop there. That's the reason I pulled that out. So when you take the glue out, if you see component leads that are green and corroded, you should remove them and clean them up as well. It'll focus on that. Hocus pocus, focus. But that, so much light doesn't really show, but that back lead is bare copper, and there's still some green. Yeah, you can see a little bit of the green on there. So what I'll do is, there's nothing wrong with this transistor. It still works fine, and there's still plenty of meat left on these leads, but they're now exposed, at least this one's exposed and corroded. So I'll just take my fiberglass brush, clean it off really well, apply a little bit of liquid flux to that, and then take some solder and just re-tin the lead. Because that's all this is on the, basically any component leads when you get them. They come pre-tinned. So I'll re-tin that lead so it has some protection for the copper, so it's not just bare copper hanging out there. But now when you rewind these little transformers, it's a good idea to make yourself a road map, because the last thing you want to do is unwind that and go, crap, how was that thing wound? How many windings were there? Where were the windings? So just take a Post-it note, do it however you want. This is just the way I do it. Now, usually what you'll see most toroid transformers, when they come from a factory, when they're actually made, it doesn't show up the color difference very much, but there are actually two different colors there. There's the orange, which is the kind of wire that I use. I have here that's in that little assortment kit, and then the other one's red. So it's very easy to count how many windings there are. Now you're always going to end up with kind of like a half wrap because you start here and you end at the other end, and it's not going to wrap the whole way on the underside. So, but what I'll do is I count on, like on this one, on the red, I can see 3 wraps. So I just pick a side, either side. It's going to be the same amount on either side. But I count 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 red wraps, and then there are 13 of the orange. Okay, and then make note on your Post-it note. So red, there's 3 wraps, and the single lead of the red one goes in the back hole. The center lead is the one that's actually broken off, is the orange enamel coated line that goes to the center, and then the pair of them where they actually twist together, and both leads, the red and the orange one, go in the front hole. And then the orange wrap, there's 13 wraps. So there's actually 5 of them here, there's 5 of them over here, and then there's 3 down at the bottom that are wrapped together with the red wire. Now when you rewind these, try to do it the same way. So they've got 5 wraps really close to each other over here, 5 of them on this side, kind of, just kind of notice the placement where they're at on here. And then if there's, like in the case of this one, you want to make sure you have the red and the orange kind of wrapped side by side, these 3, because it is a coupling transformer. But try and wind it the same way. Like I said, it's not that hard. It's just, that's where a lot of people, I think, get confused. They take these things apart, and they didn't make a road map. Like I say, you can write it out however you do. You can even see here I wrote, there's 13 wraps of the orange, but I even wrote there's 5 up in this corner, 5 up in this corner, and 3 of the wraps are at the bottom. And then, of course, the other, like I say, the 3 wraps for the red lead are going to be at the bottom. Now, when I do it, it's all going to be the orange enamel coated wire. But so let me pause the camera here. I'll rewrap it and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, so there you go. The little guy's almost done. So, here it is all. Hocus pocus, focus. Little guy is all wound up. Like I say, you can see it nice and neat, just like the original was. 5 wraps, and then 3 of each on the bottom. Now you can actually see it does look like the wire is red. The one here, that's because it's just the normal orange wire from, okay, but all I do is just to kind of keep it straight so I can actually see what I'm doing, just take a Sharpie. So before I cut it off of the roll, I just hold it tight and then just take a Sharpie and go around the wire, or red Sharpie, and just color it. So it makes it very easy to keep track of how many wraps of the different windings you have. But now the only thing I have to do is strip the enamel coating off of the leads here, solder these two, twist them together, and then solder these 2 together, and strip these and just tin them. Now usually the easiest way I find to for the average person, now I have a solder pot, and that's actually the easiest way to remove the enamel coating is I just turn the solder pot on, get the solder boiling hot, and just dip these down in, and it'll burn the enamel off. That's the only reason I keep a solder pot. But you can do it with a cigarette lighter, little torch, whatever you use. just, carefully heat it up. Don't get back too far because you don't want to go shorting windings together. But, just heat it up until you can see the enamel coating bubbling off, up to right about here. And then just take your fingernail or, shoot a piece of Scotch-Brite or, steel wool or something, abrasive, or even just a knife blade, and just kind of scratch the cooked enamel coating off of it so it's nice and shiny, and then just tin the wires. But that's all there is to it. Like I say, it's a very simple process. It's a little tedious on these little tiny ones like this, because, yeah, they're little tiny windings, trying to keep them straight. Rewinding these larger ones like this on these big coils, these are a lot easier. But of course, the big ones hardly ever need to be rewound. It's always the challenging ones that need to be rewound. So let me get that one done and put back in, clean up the leads on that pre-driver transistor, and I'll get that stuck back in there. Then I can start on the cap job. Okay, so she's all back together now with the exception of the covers and a good working radio. So all the caps were changed throughout the radio. One's on the synthesizer board, the main board, and then I'll show it once I flip it over. There's 3 that some people occasionally miss on the little accessory board here on the front. You actually have to pull the faceplate off partially to be able to get to that one, to actually change those. But removed all the corrosive glue. So also got all the glue off of this board because they poured around the oscillator here, these caps, and that's actually what they use to hold down these 2 voltage regulators. Now you'll see there's white goop on there now. That's non-corrosive, so we won't be having that problem again. And what that is actually thermal adhesive. So it's meant for gluing like heat sinks onto components, or where they actually just bond like this, let's say, to a heat sink or the side. So it's good at dissipating or transferring heat. So it'll actually, if anything, it works better than what they had on there because it'll help to transfer some of the heat down to the actual board to help dissipate it. And that helps to keep this board warm, which will help to stabilize temperature. But so there's this side of it. And we'll get her flipped over here. And here's the other side. Ah, nuts. I did forget one thing. I gotta change the light bulb. Light bulb works, but the customer did say to put a new light bulb in it since it is the original in there. So, when you change the caps on these 2 boards, about the only way you can really do it is just remove them, just desolder the boards, because they actually go through the main board, and then their edge connector soldered on the bottom side. So just pull, just desolder those boards and pull them out. Got all the nasty glue out back there. We rewound and installed the little small torroid transformer right down there. So that's the one that I showed a little bit earlier. Now I do re-glue these back down. All I use is hot glue. Again, pretty much an inert substance, not corrosive. And some manufacturers use hot glue. I don't know why some of these other manufacturers, to this day, they still use that blasted corrosive glue, and in 10 years the radios are starting to get eaten alive. I guess they look at it this way: they put that stuff in there, it's guaranteed it's going to break the radio one day, and they'll get future sales out of it. I don't know, but yeah, so in any case, all that gunk's been removed. So output power is great on this. Actually, it'll do more than what it's doing, but it's adjusted to, service manual specs, which, if you do that, your drivers and finals tend to last a lot longer. I know a lot of people love cranking up power on radios, but those are also the people that tend to smoke these components and parts of their power supplies, and yeah, it's just a bad idea. Set your radios up as the service manual states, and you won't have any problems. Oh, yeah, the other 3 caps, I'm just going to have to turn it off here. The light bulb's kind of blinding it. Like I say, there's one there, and then there's another one right down in there. And the only way you can get it, because this board actually overhangs the main board, and this one's kind of tucked up in there. The only way you can get in to desolder those 3 capacitors is, it's real easy. Just take the 2 screws out of each side of the faceplate here. Then you can actually just fold this faceplate back like this. And you can get down in there and redo them. Of course, do that when you have the processor board out, because all of those, if not, all of those connectors will have this entire thing bound up. But when you have the synthesizer or processor board out, you can then just fold this whole faceplate around, and actually changing those 3 caps isn't bad then. But there you go. So there's a good working 2510. This one does have the expansion done to the board. So you can see it's on CB right now. That was already, radio was like that when it showed up, which honestly most of these radios I ever see, with a few exceptions. I have occasionally run across 1 or 2 of these that aren't modified. But yeah, for the most part, all of these you're going to find are always going to have the full band coverage. So, but there you go. So there's a President HR2510. Put the covers back on it, be ready to send back to the customer, and put back into service for another 30 years.